Sure.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Third Shift Entrepreneur Weekly Conversation. We've got Joe Quinn with us. Joe, dude, I don't know. I don't even know where to start. You're an amazing human being. You're the former director of leadership development for Team RWB. You and I have been friends for a number of years. We've shared some beers together. We've shared some pizza together.
Too much pizza.
Too much of both. And you and your brother started, I actually say you and your brothers, because I think Jimmy's in the story, started an amazing business, Feltman's of Coney Island, a hot dog business. I'm going to set this up, but then we're going to have a conversation, because you have been saying for years that you had a desire to start a business, but you felt intimidated by being an entrepreneur because it's an intimidating word. And this is so much of what we're always talking about. And I remember you mentioning hot dogs to me, I think in like 2016. And to see you 4 years later, I'm just going to give sort of a shout out here. I ordered the hot dogs online. We got a pack of them. We had them for lunch. They're absolutely delicious. But to know that you started this business with your brother, Michael, and a lot of it in tribute to your brother, Jimmy, who, as many folks know, was tragically killed in the World Trade Center on 9/11. You've been a military veteran. This is a tribute also to Charles Feltman, the original inventor of the hot dog in Coney Island. And you are today running like a thriving business. I know you're in your new offices. You're distributed through, I think, 1,000 retail locations. It's just unbelievable to witness what you've done. But I want to welcome you and hear it in your own version. What's been happening these last few years?
No, definitely. I appreciate it, Todd. Yeah. So it's funny. So when you ask people who invented the hot dog, you usually get two responses. Either they say it was Nathan of Nathan's Famous, or they don't know, where the Quinn brothers have always known. So we grew up in southern Brooklyn, going to Coney Island particularly during the summer on the boardwalk, and just eat hot dogs, be on the beach, so on and so forth. Our grandfather and uncles would eat a hot dog and say, like, this isn't Feltman's, and they would tell us why, and all the secrets and stories of Charles Feltman, who invented the hot dog in 1867. And it was innovation. And I think the point of this too, we talked about this in Chicago years ago. I think when people think like innovation and entrepreneurship, it's like, social media app or tech or fintech, where Charles Feltman was watching beachgoers try to eat with like plates and silverware on the beach in Coney Island. And he's a German immigrant, and he was actually a baker, and he had this idea of slicing an elongated bun and putting a German sausage into it, and it took off like wildfire, and it became New York law, because that's what New Yorkers do. We like to be quick and always on the move. So he turned this small pie cart and this small innovation of an elongated bun, inventing the hot dog, and ended up building the world's largest restaurant on Coney Island until it shuttered in 1954 after the Great Depression and a couple other things that transpired. Nathan was actually a bun slicer at Feltman's, and opened up a shop next door where Feltman's was selling hot dogs for 10 cents. Nathan undercut him with a cheaper product for 5 cents, which after the Great Depression turned out to be a better model, and that became Nathan's Famous, so on and so forth. And the animosity keeps going to this day. But we just grew up with this story. And Michael, the oldest, is more of the creative member of the family. I was more of the athlete playing sports, like, destined to be in the military or be a police officer like my father. And our middle brother, Jimmy, was more of the businessman of the family. And his idea was he was going to go to Wall Street, going to make money. And then with that money, we're going to start this business and bring Feltman's back. And tragically, it didn't transpire like that. My brother, Jimmy, was killed in the World Trade Center on 9/11. He worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. He was just 23 years old, just right out of Manhattan College. So I would go on into the military, do a couple tours in Iraq and tour in Afghanistan. And it wasn't until 2015 that my brother Michael and I were watching a really bad Mets game, and we had way too many dark ales at McSorley's one night, where we started getting, bringing this idea back of like, hell, why don't we bring back Feltman's? And the bartender at McSorley's, I remember we were telling him about these grand plans that we all have. and he looked at us and said, "You know how many drunken Irish brothers come in this bar and tell us the great aspirations they have?" And it angered me so much that I stayed up all night and, filed for the LLC, submitted for a trademark, just started just doing constant work behind the scenes. And in my inbox, my brother Michael, in his inbox, in his email, got all this legal Zoom documentation. He's like, "Oh man, I guess Joe's serious." And from there, that's how it started, about 5 years ago.
So how does something like this get started? I mean, that's how it's like in the middle of the night and stuff like this. I mean, part of what we're preaching is that more people can become entrepreneurs than probably realize, because of the sort of the narratives that, you talked about that most of us don't find relatable, right? It's like, I don't know, I'm not a Harvard dropout.
Yep.
I'm not a Harvard acceptee. So it's hard to be a dropout. How, talk to us a little bit about, like, how did you know that something could come together here, and what were maybe some of the early, mistakes you made, or things that you look back on and say, I'm glad we did this right. When did you finally quit your job? So give us a little bit of the insight.
Sure. Yeah. So a couple of things I would say is that, my brother and I had no backgrounds. And one thing that I think were very beneficial in 2015 or 2020, like, use everything that, whether setting up a Gmail account for your business costs, $30 a month, whether it's using LegalZoom for everything. Like, there's all these off the shelf things that are perfectly fine. Make a Facebook page. Like, there's so many. Now picture yourself in the 70s trying to do all this stuff. I can't even wrap my head around it. And really just take comfort in that there's so many things out there that you could just do and test. So that's one thing. Second, I think it's getting the mental state first. And the way I did it was, we all spend so many hours and money on frivolous things. We all have habits. Like, I was, early 30s, when we started this. I think I just made myself younger, but whatever. But you start thinking about it in your 20s or 30s, like, okay, if you went out 3 times a week, say Friday, Saturday night, or the middle of the week, and you spent $200 a week, you multiply that by 52 weeks, you're talking about $10,000 a year on going to Cubs games or Mets games or whatever. And then the hours you spent, you talk about third shift, entrepreneur. Like, I'd rather have a employee that with their off hours, they're working on business skills or in school and the weekends. Because if I told you, like, Todd, I work for you at Bunker Labs, and after work, I go to happy hour, then I go to a Cubs game, and then the weekends I buy baseball cards or have a coin collection, would you argue with that? Yeah, great, enjoy yourself. So what's the difference if I'm taking MBA classes or starting a business with those off hours? So that was the second thing, of getting that mental space. And then the last thing I would say, I'm a big team sports person, so I have to have a partner. Like, so obviously I had a built-in partner with my brother. I had a girlfriend, now spouse, who also was helpful in getting health insurance and those type of realistic things. A lot of our peers joined the guard in the military, where they were making some money on the side. So I would say use the tools that are available to you. I think it's always helpful to have a teammate, and just mentally prepare. It's like, if I spend 1,000 hours a year and $10,000 a year on, name that, playing video games or whatever it is, you can put those resources to something that might come to fruition.
Yeah. Well, give us a snapshot of the business today. How's it going?
Yeah. So in 2015, we sold 1 pack of hot dogs at Brenman's it's a local butcher in Brooklyn that he owed a favor to my mother, I believe. So my mother was able to get us in our first butcher shop. And so now we are in over 3,000 supermarkets across the country, in Publix, Whole Foods, and we're also selling online in e-commerce. I think we're about to sell, first year, I think we sold maybe a couple hundred hot dogs. We're about to sell 4 or 5 million hot dogs this year in 2020, and looking to grow. So it's just been wild. And then, the other thing that we're looking at that we talk a lot of the story of the hot dog a lot, but we're also a all natural brand, which I think is important. For me, I think the things that we breathe in and the food that we put into our body is really related to our health. And I have 3 young kids. My brother Michael has a daughter. So early on, we just don't want to slap a label on some, crummy hot dog that was filled with fillers and nitrates and all the bad things why a hot dog has a bad reputation to begin with. So we're starting to more move into the natural category of, getting into different SKUs and product lines. We have a great mustard, for instance, and looking at other, meat products that are all natural that would be sort of accepted in the Whole Foods.
So as you look back, and again, there's a lot of people who are listening who have like an idea of something that they want to pursue, but it feels intimidating. What are like 3 things that you think you did well? And maybe like a couple things that you think you screwed up? I mean, I love your advice around like, don't spend money for things that like, don't waste money on legal contracts. Like just get by with whatever's available. Gmail, it's good enough. Use it. I think that's such good advice. But what are other things that you would say that you did well, and then maybe 1 or 2 things that you think you could have done differently?
Yeah, I think what we did well is I think in threes. So I think for entrepreneurs, there's 2 ways to compete: on price and then on differentiation. I feel it's impossible to compete on price no matter what business you're starting as an entrepreneur. So I thought what we did well was really target the differentiation and then sticking to it, right? Like what makes this different? And the easy path would have been to do a, cured hot dog that's just cheaper. But why we wouldn't be different than everyone else? So I think just the narrative and the story and the passion and that stickingness to the mission of what we wanted to accomplish, which is to inspire families to eat natural food, 1 hot dog at a time. Like we really stuck to it. And I think that's endured. I think along the lines of what we could have improved, I would have went to e-commerce a lot earlier. I feel e-commerce is a world where for some reason we think it's over. Like, I don't know if it's through the 2000s, there was the bubble and we just think Amazon owns it. It's still a wide open field in e-commerce. And the same way I mentioned as far as like setting things up. So I remember I built the first website on Wix, and we connected to Shopify, and then my brother would fulfill hot dogs in his 300 square foot apartment in Manhattan. And the good thing now is like that model has not changed. It's just improved. We have more distribution centers. It's out of his apartment, but the thought process hasn't changed, but the execution has. So for me, we only really started turning the dial on e-commerce this year, where if I was making a recommendation, I would tell people that's where to start, no matter what you're selling, and just kind of do it yourself and kind of grow from there. And I think that was sort of a big mistake, because I feel if we started earlier, we could have been a lot, further along in the e-commerce than where we are today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is interesting that, the people seem kind of cautious around e-commerce. I mean, I'll probably put myself in that camp too. And I think there's this idea that you're going to get tons of price pressure if you go to e-commerce, or that, to your point, like Amazon's just going to kind of eat you up, but not if you're differentiated, right? I mean, I think you guys have, your goal is not to be the lowest price point, right? And that's a winning strategy because it's a higher quality product. So interesting, pursuing e-commerce. Who have been your mentors along the way? Where do you go for advice? I mean, to figure this stuff out. Yeah,
so I mean, early on, I would say who we had dinner with 4 years ago, Blaine Smith, who was the executive director of Team Red, White, and Blue at the time, went on to become president of GoRuck, and it was almost built this almost incubator in itself. That if you look at all the dudes that and dudettes that were at Team Red, White, and Blue at the time, and now at Cathcart's the executive director of Mission Roll Call, and he got his MBA, and we have people at Salesforce and, across the way. So, I think he's someone that's a sounding board that I always kind of go to. Even when I became an executive director at Headstrong, it was someone that I really leaned on. And then there's, older grads through the West Point network. It really is across the board. I think this happened about 3 years ago, where I said, you know what, the quickest way the best way, it sounds counterintuitive, to build trust with someone is by asking for help. So it's just a wide net of asking someone for help and not being shy about it. And across the board, when it comes to e-commerce, when it comes to marketing, or so on and so forth. So those are a kind of a couple of avenues where I sought mentorship from. And I would also add too, sometimes I think we think mentorship is, someone that's in their 60s now that was the CEO of a big company. They might not even know how the heck to start, an entrepreneur. So sometimes I would look to your left and right for, me learning from Todd Conner and what he did versus, someone that was the CEO of Pepsi or something. You might not get a lot more information from.
What's the challenge these days? What's the big rock?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge now is just kind of demand and building up the capacity, and then marketing. I feel marketing is always the last bastion. I probably get unsolicited email a day from someone about, marketing and e-commerce and social media management, because you really got to walk that line, because it's easy to kind of spend money and spend marketing dollars that are efficient to where you are and where your growth pattern is, and then capacity. And it's just, and again, the other thing I'd say too, there is this. I'm not a huge Instagrammer, but I'll see if I go to like hashtag entrepreneur on like Instagram or something, I don't recognize any of those images. There are always these like glorious images of people in really fancy places doing, like, looking good at their laptop or at the pool. Yeah, like that.
I'm like, how do you find time to work out? Like, I'm busy.
I know, exactly. So I that's one thing I would warn it is not glorious, and why I do think your book makes sense and the path I took as far as, dip your toe in and take it a step at a time and see what works on your off time, because it isn't glamorous at all. And that's the thing. It's just, we're doing a lot better than we were the previous year, and last year we're doing a lot better there, but we're always like a day away from folding and a day away from being the biggest company in the world. And you kind of always straddling that every day,
Yeah, learning to live in that. Joe, I got one more question, and then I want to summarize some of the key thoughts here. But what's your advice for someone who's watching this, who's got an idea that they've been sitting with? This is like so many of the military veterans we know. They're used to, like, pushing through walls and like taking on big missions and doing it alongside people they love. Tons of people would love to be in the position that you're at, with like a real product that you can touch, you can eat, you can feel it. You can, you're doing it with your brother. You're doing it in honor of Jimmy. What's your advice for someone that's sort of watching this, who feels like, because here's what I would say. I think the biggest travesty is not that people are unemployed. I mean, that's a big deal. But like, if we're unemployed, we got to get employed. We got to create financial security. But I think there's a whole generation of military veterans, but even more than that, who are stuck in a condition of like, it's not broken, but it's not fulfilling. Yep. And they feel like they're sliding sideways, and they feel like their best years are behind them. But then maybe they've got an idea. What do you say to those folks?
Yeah, it's going to sound cliche, but just do it. And I think most of it is just mental. There's a lot of just lack of confidence, which I didn't have, and it's just, you gotta, because, and I'll be totally serious. Like, so, I went to West Point, I went to the wars. So one side of my family is all lawyers, right? I went to West Point, I went to grad school at Harvard, and I was the executive director of a nonprofit that did suicide prevention. And now I'm selling hot dogs, right? And that is not easy. Like, that's like, I get red thinking about it, that people are laughing at you, because there's something about a hot dog that makes people just laugh. And I think most of us have the same feeling. It's sort of like, I did X, Y, and Z. I got this good job. I got respect. All these different things. People are going to laugh at me if I try to do this, or start a CrossFit gym, or build this product. It's dumb. You got to just kind of let go of it, and just minimal viable product, and just kind of do it, and look at it as sort of a profitable hobby of like, this is what I'm doing with my spare time. But I would say if you could do it with someone, that will give you that emotional support between the 2 of you, 3 of you, 4 of you to kind of balance the workload to kind of get it going. Because at least it's just 2 crazy people, not just one. But you have it in you. It's nothing's dumb. And people also will tell you, and no matter what you do, it's all been done before, right? Oh, well, that's already been done. That's, oh, here's my idea. Well, that's been done. This person, nobody's done anything. And the good thing about being small and starting out, you could always sort of pivot, right? We had the idea of being the Shake Shack of hot dogs. That was the initial concept, but we pivoted along the way because we realized that people would rather buy a pack of hot dogs for $20 through the window at St. Mark's Place than be given a prepared hot dog. So just kind of do it. And if you do it with a partner, more the better. I know it's kind of cliche, but really that's all it really is.
Man, it's amazing. Joe, this has been great. I'm going to summarize some key things. This idea that being a third shift entrepreneur can work. Differentiation more than price. So many people think that buyers are competing on price or choosing based on price. It's just not true. Particularly for most startups, it's just like you're the better option that happened to have found them first. And your argument is that you're not going to win on price. I would agree with that. So be differentiated. The idea of partnership, right, with a brother or someone else who can kind of pull you along the way is so important. We talk about mentorship all the time as not being like the graybeard wisdom, but it's really like who's 2 years ahead of you in the journey.
Yep.
Because they have the real relevant stuff. They're the ones that can tell you, oh man, don't spend money on that. Just go to LegalZoom or, hey, check out e-commerce. It just gave my business a spike versus like the global views that people would otherwise have. I think that's great. The advantage of small is that you can pivot, which is a huge one. And then, this final thing, I just want to underscore it because it is about, I tell people all the time, I don't think it's the money that's holding people back. I think that's the safe excuse. The real excuse is like, are we going to feel embarrassed because we're doing things for the first time?
Yeah.
And we're doing things that like at some point we make a choice between like our resume story and like our eulogy story. And the resume story says like, keep going up and to the right, but that narrative can keep us stuck, and I think about this as, just having transitioned out as CEO of Bunker Labs and getting on LinkedIn Live and doing stuff that is new to me. And I'm like, is it going to look desperate? Is it going to look strange? And I'm like, I just get heart-centered. I'm like, I want to help people and this is how I know how to do it. And so we'll just start these conversations and see what happens. And I think it's that willingness to let go of the reputational ego. And it's not always ego, but it's, you had a big job, right? So to step away and say, I'm actually going to, make hot dogs is like, on the one hand, you can be like, oh, that's silly, but look at what you've built, and the story that you can be so proud of. Even then, I would say you should have been proud of it all along. So just do it.
Yeah. And I would end on too, that, it takes a village too. And the coolest part of this was the amount of people we asked help from, my cousin Tommy, who, just, an amazing lawyer and, just became like the fourth Quinn brother and just he's always been wild. I would go off to war and then Mike was doing his thing. And it was almost like he was waiting for, I wish I could do something for, Michael and Joe, particularly after 9/11. And it's like, hey, Tommy, we started this thing. We have no idea what, and it was just the willingness and joy for family and friends to help you along the way. And then, that's the other thing I think about, like, I think sometimes human beings, particularly veterans, don't like the word networking, but like authentically just caring for people and just saying yes to things. And whether you're not expecting something in return, in the long run, that comes back to you, particularly in an environment where you have no idea what you're doing. You just need help. Even if someone just purchasing your product, right? Like, because they want to support. Because that's the other thing. I just don't believe there's these superhero entrepreneurs. It really takes a village. And like for Michael and I, the friends and family and the team that does all the work around us now, like those are really the heroes. But being able to be a musician to ask for that help is, not only feeling embarrassed of starting something, but then the next phase of that, asking for help, is even harder. So if you get through those two things, you can definitely do anything. And again, we still live in a country where we could do this stuff, which is great.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, you guys have done an amazing job, and I'm really proud of you, Joe, and impressed. And I know a lot of people are rooting for you for Feltman's, and it's a great hot dog. So what's not to love? So
everybody likes a good hot dog.
Everyone loves a good hot dog. So, hey, this is amazing. I love seeing it in real time. This is like the blessing of where I get to sit, is to see these stories come to life, and yours is among one of the best. So congratulations to you, Joe. Thanks for spending some time with us. And we're going to post this, and I encourage you folks, we'll share how to get access to Feltman's and get the product and see where it's being sold. Stay in touch with Joe. And then, again, we're here to help you start things. So if you're out there and you're watching this and you think you got something that you're poised to start, and just know that there's a community out there that can support you through Bunker Labs or me personally or a number of folks. But don't let the reputational concerns hold you back. People want to see you succeed. And I think, Joe, you've demonstrated that. So thanks for your time, brother. And we'll see the rest of you next week when we got another a couple great entrepreneurs coming in the segment.
Great. Thanks, Todd.
Thanks, buddy.